Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Crash, and what I have right here is Tommy. It's a book about a woman who kills men, I think. I haven't actually read it. But this is a very special manga. It's from 1987. It's written by, I don't know, a random dentist. And the thing about this manga, here, you can see it. The thing about this manga that is so special is that it is the very first horror manga. This thing right here just invented horror as a whole. People before Tommy just didn't know what fear was. It is such a revolution of the medium, of anything, really. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this one. And what's this? This is a horror manga. This is from before Tommy. What the fuck? Okay. So I know that most people are aware that Junji Ito isn't the only horror mangaka, or even the first horror mangaka, even if they don't know any others. But that's the thing. Most people don't know any others, and I'm not trying to shame anyone. Junji Ito has been dominating the scene since his debut and is synonymous with horror manga, but that hasn't always been the case. Before Ito was not famous. That wasn't hard to figure out. But today I want to take a look at the ones that came before him, some of the horror mangaka that formed this genre, that created the pillars and foundations that Junji Ito would build upon. And I want to start with one Shigeru Miyazuki. Shigeru Miyazuki isn't only a horror mangaka. As a matter of fact, he's known for his gekiga works like Hitler and Non-Nonba, which pull a lot from his real life. Non-Nonba being actually the nickname of an old woman who used to take care of him and told him stories of yokai, creatures of Japanese folklore. This will be very important later on. He would be drafted in the Second World War, where he'd lose his left arm, but when he came back from the war, he returned to work as an artist, something he always seemed to have a knack for. He started as a kamishibai artist, kamishibai being a kind of portable one-man theater, often walking around showing stories to young children. As a kamishibai artist, he was introduced to the work of Masami Ito and Kei Tatsumi, one called Akaba Kitaro. It was a popular series back in the 1920s. Miyazuki would convince his publishers to try his own take at a story about Kitaro, a ghost boy who went on adventures meeting and fighting various yokai. It was a success, but sadly the kamishibai was a dying art form by the end of the 1950s, being replaced by a thing called manga. Shigeru Miyazuki would then move to manga and would debut in 1957 with Rocketman, and in 1959 he would transfer the Akaba Kitaro into manga form, being forced to change the name in 1965 to the one it's more well known by, Gegegege no Kitaro. Kitaro is pretty much the quintessential original horror manga. Sure, it's made for children, it has the same charm as titles like Astro Boy and Doraemon, but with a coat of creepy yokai over it. But it's that charm that makes the series one of the most enduring series in anime and manga as a whole. The manga would continue being published until 1986, but the anime adaptations of it just didn't really ever end. The first one started in 1968, the second in 1971, then another in 1985, another one in 1996, then another reboot in 2007 with a spin-off in 2008, and the final reboot so far in 2018, which just means that we are due for another reboot somewhere at the tailgate of the decade as well. Kitaro actually influenced the country in how they depict certain yokai. Certain mythological creatures of their own folklore have their aspects dictated by this little series. Miyazuki himself would be a big figure in yokai studies during his life, and would even write other books on yokai. While Kitaro isn't, again, pure horror, there's no way I could start this video without mentioning it. Another mangaka that I'd like to mention is the one who wrote the book that I showed you earlier, Kazuo Umezu, or Kazuo Umezu, depending on how you want to stylize it. He is, according to Viz, the most influential horror manga artist ever. That's not an overstatement. Contrary to Miyazuki, Umezu really focused on horror manga for most of his career, although he also did write some successful comedy manga like Makoto-chan. He started drawing professionally when he was still in high school in the 1950s. He would start by writing horror shoujo manga and be very successful at it. His series Yamabiko Shimai would be his first hit manga, and the last of them, AB Shoujo from 1965, would be published in English as Reptilia. He would also write the classics Cat Eye Boy in 1967 and The Drifting Classroom in 1972. He would retire after finishing the manga 14 in 1995, but if you want to see what Umezu would write in 2022, you are in luck, because he has recently announced that he's coming back with one more manga. Well, there are certainly elements of Umezu's manga that feel dated, like his art style. He's not called the master of horror without reason, and his manga do transmit a sense of dread and tension very well, even after all these years. So if you want to get into horror manga besides Ito, it's definitely someone to check out. But if you want something more grotesque, may I introduce you to the works of the one and only Hideshi Ino. Hideshi Ino was born right after the war, and that may seem to be something random to point out, but it is something that does pop up in his works. As a matter of fact, he's someone who heavily uses elements of his life in his stories. That wouldn't be that much of a big deal if his works weren't some of the most messed up stuff to ever be published in manga form. He was born in Manchuria and almost died while traveling back to Japan. His father had a very creepy and huge tattoo on his back as well, and guess who else was born in Manchuria just after the war, almost died traveling back to Japan as a young kid, and had a dad with a huge and creepy tattoo. If you guessed the main character of Panorama of Vel, who is a painter who paints with his own blood and thinks that his actual dad is the atomic bomb, you'd be right. There's also a similar character in another Ino manga called Lullabies from Hell, which is literally named Hideshi Ino. This guy is very messed up. This is how he processes his thoughts, I guess. But also one of the most interesting mangaka I've ever read about. His work started in 1967, the alternative manga magazine COM, and his other successful manga include The Red Snake, Hell Baby, and Bug Boy. Hideshi Ino will try his hand at directing and writing horror movies and will be very successful as well. But with how grotesque and violent his movies also were, the authorities started investigating because they thought the movies were just straight up snuff films. God, I really need to see those. Those three are the ones that I think you should check out first. They should be relatively easy to find some of their stuff, even if you only read in legal ways. But there's so many horror mangaka out there that there's some that I still wanted to briefly mention. Shinichi Koga is one that I feel I should mention. He was a popular horror mangaka during his time, apparently having written almost 50 different stories, from which I can only find any good information on 1975's Eko Eko Azaract and its 1993 sequel. This manga was adapted into movies a couple of times as well, and I've read a little bit of it, and it's mostly just this witch girl that gets bullied by a random student every chapter, and she just black magic their ass to hell, then drops a one-liner on their dead body, and the last panels are always her laughing and walking away in a super sassy way. And it's just legitimately great, and stuck full of satanic imagery like everywhere. Just read it, I assure you're gonna have a good time. And one couldn't forget Kazuichi Anawa, and his contribution to the Irogoro genre. He wasn't as brutal as a lot of other mangaka would be, but his stories definitely have inspired a lot of them, probably even including names like Junji Ito and Osamu Furuya. But his influence is very noticeable in Suehiro Maruo, probably the second most well-known in the genre after the insane man that is Shintaro Kago. Suehiro Maruo is the man behind Shoujo Tsubaki, which is pretty famous for his anime movie adaptation, which was made by a single man who just really wanted to bring this bizarre story to life. Shoujo Tsubaki would also be translated to English in the 80s as Mr. Arashi's Amazing Freak Show. Osamu Tezuka would also dabble in horror as he moved away from manga catered towards children to more seinen-esque content. These works would include Alabaster and Vampires, for example. Gonagai is also a big example of someone who would also dabble in horror. Sure is more well known for being one of the very first ecchi mangaka, but works like Devilman really show a darker side to his works. Umezu also isn't the only mangaka to do horror in shoujo. Suzui Miuichi, Shinji Wada, and of course the Year 24 group would contribute to the genre, most prominently Ryoku Yamagishi. And there's a lot of horror mangaka that even I mentioned here aren't even the full list of the mangaka that I had to read and check for this video. Others include Kazumasa Takayama, Daijiro Moroshi, and Yumeji Tanima. But there's a lot more that I'm probably not even aware that they exist, and they may have excellent stuff. Junji Ito is not by any means the be-all and all of horror manga. He never was and never will be. He's great. Don't take this video as me saying that I don't like Junji Ito, because I do. His contributions to the genre that I love are huge. But there's a lot more to explore from this genre, from before and after Ito's debut, so use this holiday as an excuse to check them out. So happy Halloween, and if it's not Halloween when you're watching this, then happy whatever the hell day it is. Just don't forget to add some horror in your life. But if after all of this you actually just want me to talk about Ito or his works, on the left there will be a review of his most popular one, Uzumaki. And if you watched this little here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.